Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to a time when the world was truly dark. A time when your survival, your food, and your very sense of reality were tied not to the sun, but to the silent, silvery glow of the moon. We're going to step into the muddy, calloused boots of a medieval peasant and try to understand not just what they saw in the moon, but what they felt. Imagine a world without a single light switch, where the night is a vast, black ocean, and that glowing orb is your only raft. And yes, you probably won't survive this, not because of plague or famine, but because you'd almost certainly trip in the dark on your way to the latrine pit on your first night, and that would be that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other curious minds like yours. And as always, I'd love to see where you're all tuning in from, so drop your city or country and the local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't wake up because an alarm is buzzing. You don't wake up because a sliver of streetlight has snuck past your blackout curtains. You wake up because the cold has finally won the battle against your thin woolen blanket. The fire in the center of the hut, the one that's supposed to burn all night, has dwindled to a few sullen ruby-red embers. They offer no light, only a faint, smoky scent that mixes with the smell of damp earth, sleeping bodies, and old straw. You are in a box of pure, undiluted blackness. This isn't the kind of dark, the kind that's just a deep shade of gray, polluted by the glow of a dozen tiny electronics and the city lights reflecting off the clouds. This is a profound, physical, ink-black nothing. If you hold your hand an inch from your face, you see precisely the same thing you'd see if you squeezed your eyes shut. Nothing. A cough from your father breaks the stillness, followed by the soft rustle of your mother turning on the straw mattress you all share. The air is thick with the sound of breathing, in, out. A slow, rhythmic reminder that you are packed into this one-room wattle and daub house with your entire family. You need to get up. A familiar pressure in your bladder tells you the journey to the small outhouse, really just a designated trench behind the cottage, is unavoidable. This is the first test of the day, or rather, the night. Your phone's flashlight won't be invented for another, 900 years or so good luck. You have to move by memory alone. You slide your legs off the raised wooden bed frame, your bare feet meeting the cold, packed earth floor. You know there are 3 steps to the hearth. You know your younger brother is sleeping on a pallet to your left. You know the family's scrawny dog is curled up somewhere near the dying embers. You carefully step over what you hope is just a pile of laundry. Every single night is a blind navigation of your own home, a place you know better than the back of your own hand, but which the darkness renders a treacherous obstacle course. You find the rough-hewn wooden door, its latch a familiar shape in your hand. You pull it open, and the night air hits you. It's sharp, clean, and cold, and as your eyes adjust, you see it. The world is not black. Tonight, the world is bathed in a ghostly silver light. The moon is 3/4 full, a celestial lantern hanging in a sea of glittering, unfamiliar stars. Suddenly, the darkness is not absolute. It has contours. It has depth. The thatch on your neighbor's roof has a shimmering, frosted edge. The path to the privy, a muddy track of compressed dirt, is a pale ribbon winding through the dark grass. The skeletal branches of the trees at the edge of your family's small plot of land are etched in sharp, black relief against the glowing sky. This light is a gift. It's the difference between being a blind creature, fumbling and helpless, and being a person who can see. This is the first lesson the moon teaches you. It is the master of the night. On a night with no moon, the world outside your door is a terrifying, formless void. To travel even a few hundred feet would be an act of reckless folly. The medieval landscape is not a neatly manicured park. It's a tapestry of hidden ruts, sharp rocks, sudden ditches, and animal burrows, all perfectly capable of breaking your ankle and leaving you stranded until sunrise. This is a key historical fact of the era. For the vast majority of people, life simply stopped at sunset. The curfew bell you might hear rung from the distant village church, from the old French couvre-feu, meaning cover the fire, wasn't just an order to prevent crime. It was a practical announcement that the useful day was over. Bank the fire, bar the door, and go to sleep. It was the medieval version of your parents announcing the Wi-Fi is shutting off for the night. Staying up was a waste of precious candles or rushlights, if you could even afford them, and a pointless risk. But on a night like this, the world is transformed. The moonlight is your guide. It's your security. It's not warm like the sun. It's a cool, analytical light that makes the familiar world seem alien and magical. It drains the color from everything, leaving a world of silver, white, and infinite shades of black. Historians still argue whether the common peasant sphere of the dark was a genuine terror of the supernatural, of the demon spirits and fae folk, said to haunt the benighted hours, or simply a practical response to a world where a misstep could lead to serious injury. For you, standing here in the cold, feeling the mud squish between your toes, it feels like both are true. The long dancing shadows cast by the trees certainly look like they could hide a goblin or two, but you re far more immediately concerned with not slipping in a puddle of what you dearly hope is just rainwater. The moon, in this moment, is your benevolent warden. It keeps the absolute, terrifying blackness at bay. It is the only reliable source of light in a world that, for half of its existence, is shrouded in darkness. It is not a pretty ornament. It is a fundamental tool for existence. And as you look up at its pockmarked, silent face, you understand that this great lamp in the sky doesn't just watch over you. It commands the night. You make your way back from the trench, your feet numb with cold, and slip back inside the hut. You pull the heavy door shut, and the absolute blackness returns, a velvet curtain dropping on the silvery stage outside. But the image of the moon is still burned onto the back of your eyelids. It's more than just a lamp. You know this because you've been taught, not with books and charts, but with a pointed finger and a quiet word from your father as you both mend a fence, or from your mother as she sorts herbs. The moon is your calendar. In your world, the concept of a date is a fuzzy, abstract thing, the concern of lords and bishops. If someone told you an event was happening on, say, October 27th, it would be as meaningless as telling you it's happening on Neptune. Your time is measured in more tangible, cyclical ways. The passing of the seasons, the life cycle of your crops, the births and deaths in the village, and most reliably of all, the patient, predictable journey of the moon across the sky. The very word you use for a block of time, month, is just a slurred together version of the word moon. This is a fundamental truth of your language, a piece of historical evidence baked right into your speech. The sun rules the day, giving you a simple binary sense of time. It's light or it's dark. But the moon tells a story. It breaks the darkness into manageable chapters. You've learned to read its face as if it were a beloved book. You don't have fancy terms like waxing gibbous or waning crescent. You have words that mean something. When it's a bare sliver, the first hint of its return after being swallowed by the dark, you might call it new horn. As it fattens, it becomes the half round. Then comes the full face, glorious and bright, staring down with its unblinking silver eye. And as it begins to shrink, it's the old horn, tired and retreating, promising another brief period of total darkness before the cycle begins again. This isn't just a passive observation. It's an active and essential part of your planning. It's your original gangster Google Calendar. You wouldn't dream of scheduling a meeting because you have no meetings, but you do schedule your entire life around this celestial clock. Is the moon growing? Then the world is in a state of increase. Energy is building. It's a time for beginnings. Is it shrinking? Then the world is in a state of decrease. It's a time for ending things, for clearing away. This is the foundational logic of your world. When your father decides it's time to plant the spring barley, he'll wait for the first new horn to appear. The growing light of the waxing moon seems to him like a promise of vitality, a cosmic encouragement for the seeds to sprout and reach for the sky. The village priest, of course, has his own calendar. He stands at the pulpit on Sunday and announces that the feast of St. Michael is approaching, or that you have 7 weeks until Easter. This is important information, especially for knowing when to fast and when to feast, but it feels administrative. It's like a memo from a distant head office. Your moon calendar is different. It's personal. You can see it. You can feel its influence. When the priest says Lent is coming, your father nods. But he knows it is coming because he can see the moon that marks the start of the hungry season getting thinner every night. Historians still debate the extent to which the average peasant mentally separated this practical moon lore from what the church would have condemned as pagan worship. For you, it's not really a question of belief. It's a question of results. You don't pray to the moon. You simply work with it the way you work with the soil and the rain. It's a partner, a moody and sometimes unpredictable one, but a partner nonetheless. This partnership includes a healthy dose of folk meteorology, a quirky and surprisingly detailed set of rules. You know, for instance, to look at the new moon's orientation. If the crescent is lying on its back, like a bowl, you call it a wet moon. It looks like it could hold water, and that's a sign that the coming month will be rainy and damp. But if it's standing more upright, so the water would spill out, you call it a dry moon, and you expect a period of clear weather. Is it accurate? Sometimes. Is it a system? Absolutely. You have a whole library of these little observations. Seeing the new moon for the first time over your right shoulder is good luck. Seeing it over your left is a bad omen. It is better to have a coin in your pocket to turn over for prosperity when you first greet it. These aren't grand theological principles. They are small, everyday rituals that give you a sense of agency in a world where you have very little. They are your way of trying to read the user manual for the universe. As you lie there in the dark, you mentally tick through the moon's phase. It's just past full. The waning has begun. This means the time for decrease is at hand. In the coming days, your father will likely decide it as a good time to go through the fields and pull weeds, a task of removal. Your mother will gather certain roots, things that grow down into the earth, away from the fading light. It will soon be time to slaughter the excess piglet, an act of reduction to ensure the others have enough food to make it through the winter. These aren't coincidences. They are the rhythm of your life, a rhythm set by that silver orb. You don't need a watch ticking on your wrist. You don't need a calendar tacked to the wall. You have a clock that hangs in the heavens, one that tells you not what hour it is, but what kind of time it is. Time to build or time to break. Time to plant or time to harvest. Time to begin or time to end. And as you drift towards sleep, you feel that rhythm pulsing slowly, a silent cosmic heartbeat that governs your entire world. Days turn into weeks, and the moon calendar continues its silent, relentless turning in the sky. The waning moon has shriveled and vanished, plunging the nights back into that profound, ink-black darkness where your world shrinks to the 4 walls of your hut. Then a new horn appears, a promise of light returning, and the cycle of increase begins again. If the moon can do that to the ocean, what else can it do? It pulls the water up through the soil, making it available to the roots of your crops. It pulls the sap up the stems, feeding the leaves and encouraging lush, vigorous growth. This is the time of increase made manifest in your garden. This upward pull is why it is the perfect time to plant things whose bounty is produced above the ground, like your beans and grains. You are literally giving them a lift, a cosmic boost to get started. You sow your seeds in rhythm with this upward drawing force, hoping to catch the wave. It's a bit like a modern gardener timing their planting to avoid a frost. But instead of consulting a weather app, you consult the sky. You look from the distant sea back to the small, precious patch of green inside your fence. The cabbages, the onions, the beans, they are all full of water. Not as much as the sea, of course, but that's their lifeblood. The sap in a plant is like the blood in your veins. It carries the stuff of life. It's a small internal ocean. And so the logic is inescapable, as solid and real as the mallet in your father's hand. If the moon pulls the water in the sea, it must also pull the water in the soil and the sap in the plants. This isn't superstition. It's what you would call common sense. It's an elegant, unifying theory for how the world works, based on direct, empirical evidence. You're standing now not in the dark, but in the broad, honest light of day. You're helping your father reinforce the small, wobbly fence that separates your family's vegetable patch from the common grazing land. It's a constant battle. Your neighbor's pig has a particular genius for finding the weakest spot and treating your fledgling cabbages like a personal buffet. As you hold a rough-hewn wooden post steady, your father pounds it into the damp earth with a heavy wooden mallet. The work is rhythmic, punctuated by the dull thud of wood on wood and his grunts of exertion. He stops for a moment, wiping a smear of sweat and dirt from his brow with the back of his hand. He squints, not at the sun, but towards the distant shimmer of the sea, which on a clear day like this is a faint blue line on the horizon. The tide will be high soon, he says, more to himself than to you. He knows this not because he has a tide chart from the future, but because he knows the moon is just past its new horn. The moon and the tide are locked in a dance, a simple and observable fact of your life. This is one of the most powerful pieces of evidence you have, a daily, undeniable demonstration of the moon's power over the world. You've been to the coast. You've seen how the vast, powerful ocean is helpless against the moon's invisible pull. Twice a day, it swells and breathes, its water drawn up as if by a great celestial magnet, and twice a day, it retreats. The sheer, awesome force required to move that much water is mind-boggling. It's the greatest display of power you can witness on Earth. This observation is the cornerstone of your entire lunar philosophy. You believe that when the moon is waxing, growing fuller and stronger in the sky, its gravitational pull, a term you don't have, but a concept you understand intimately, is drawing moisture upwards. Conversely, when the moon begins to wane, its influence changes. The light is fading, and you believe its upward pull on the world's moisture is weakening. The energy of the earth is no longer being drawn up towards the sky, but is now sinking back down, deep into the soil. This is the time for planting things that grow downwards, like your turnips and carrots. You want them to focus their energy on developing a strong, fleshy root, and the waning moon encourages this downward concentration of life force. This is also why, as you learned as a child, you harvest your root vegetables during the waning moon. You believe the sap has retreated down into the root, making it fuller, more nutritious, and this is a key fringe tidbit less likely to rot in storage. You're harvesting the plant when it's at its peak of earthiness. This belief extends beyond just water. You see its influence on the very wood you're using for the fence post. Your father would never dream of felling a tree for timber when the moon is waxing. You see the network of veins beneath the skin, carrying your own blood. You are also mostly water, just like the plants. Does the moon pull on you, too? The thought is both unsettling and strangely comforting. It suggests you are not separate from this great cosmic dance, but a part of it. The same forces that heave the mighty ocean and coax a tiny seed from the earth are at work within you. Historians still argue whether this sap theory was a universally held belief or a more regional piece of folklore. But for you, here in your muddy patch of land, it's the glue that holds your understanding of the world together. The moon isn't just a calendar. It's the great engine of all the subtle, invisible forces that govern growth and decay, life and death. The tide doesn't lie. The water knows. And what the water knows, the wood and the cabbages and the turnips must know too. He'd tell you the wood would be wet. The upward pull of the waxing moon, he believes, draws the sap high into the trunk and branches. Timber cut at this time will be heavy, green, and will take forever to dry. Worse, it will be prone to warping, splitting, and attracting wood-boring insects who are drawn to the sugary sap. It is live wood, full of the moon's moist energy. To get good, hard, durable timber, you must wait for the waning moon, specifically the last few days before the new moon, known as the dark of the moon. This is when the sap has retreated deep into the roots, leaving the trunk relatively dry and inert. Wood cut then is dead wood, stable and strong. This is a piece of folk wisdom so deeply ingrained that it will persist for centuries. A historical fact found in countless farming almanacs well into the 18th and 19th centuries. As you finish with the post and move on to the next one, you glance down at your own hands. The logic of the moon's pull on water and sap feels solid, a satisfying explanation for the invisible mechanics of your world. But it's only one part of a much grander, more elegant tapestry of belief that covers everything. You don't think of it as a belief system. You think of it as the way things are. It's a quiet philosophy that hums in the background of your life, as constant as the wind. At its heart is a simple, powerful idea. As above, so below. This phrase, which you've never heard spoken aloud, but whose principle you understand in your bones, means that the heavens and the earth are a mirror of each other. The great cosmic patterns of the stars and planets are reflected in the small, everyday patterns of life on the ground. The universe is not a collection of separate, unrelated things. It's a single interconnected organism, and the moon is one of its most vital organs. You see this principle of sympathy and correspondence everywhere. The sun, hot and dry, is obviously masculine. The moon, cool and moist, is just as obviously feminine. This isn't a poem. It's a practical observation. The sun's heat can be fierce, aggressive, even deadly. It scorches the fields in a drought and can beat you down with sunstroke. The moon's light is gentle, passive, nurturing. It doesn't create life, but it seems to coax it out, to preside over the quiet, mysterious processes of germination and growth that happen in the dark. It's the midwife of the plant world. This gendering of the cosmos helps you make sense of their different roles. The sun provides the raw power, the energy. The moon provides the subtle influence, the timing, the rhythm. You need both, in balance, just as you need both a father and a mother. This idea of sympathetic magic, as scholars would later call it, is woven into the fabric of your daily actions. It is the logic that says things that look alike or share a quality can influence each other. A waxing moon is a growing moon. Its light is visibly increasing night after night. Therefore, this period of time is sympathetically linked to all kinds of growth. It's not just about the sap in the plants, but about the very idea of increase. This is why you would start any new project during the waxing moon. If you were to begin weaving a new piece of cloth, building a new stone wall for a field, or even trying to put some weight on a sickly calf, you would do it under the encouraging influence of the growing moon. You are aligning your small act of creation with the great cosmic act of creation happening in the sky. It's like trying to swim with the current instead of against it. Why would anyone choose to struggle? Conversely, the waning moon's shrinking light corresponds to all acts of diminishing, banishing, or ending. This is the time for culling, weeding, and pruning. It's also the time for more mundane tasks. If you had a stubborn wart on your finger, the village wise woman would tell you to rub it with a piece of bacon and bury the bacon under a waning moon. The logic is perfect. As the moon shrinks to nothing in the sky, and as the bacon rots to nothing in the earth, so too will your wart wither away. This is a classic example of sympathetic logic, a quirky tidbit of folk medicine that seems absurd now, but was perfectly rational in your context. You are linking the fate of your wart to two other processes of decay. This as above, so below. Thinking is a historical fact that defines the pre-Enlightenment mindset. It wasn't just for peasants. It was the foundation of scholarly alchemy, medicine, and natural philosophy. Learned men in universities, poring over ancient texts from Greece and Arabia, operated on this same basic principle. They believed the 7 known planets corresponded to the 7 metals, and that the health of the human body, the microcosm, was governed by the same celestial influences as the universe, the macrocosm. You don't know the fancy words for it, but your folk wisdom is a simplified, practical version of the same idea. The alchemist in his laboratory, trying to turn lead into gold, is, in a way, just a more ambitious version of you planting your beans under a waxing moon. Both of you are trying to work the levers of cosmic sympathy to get a desired result. Historians still argue whether the common folk consciously understood the philosophical underpinnings of these practices, or if they were just following tradition, because that's how it's always been done. Standing in your field, you don't think in terms of philosophy. You think in terms of what works. Your grandfather planted his beans this way, and his grandfather before him. And they always had beans. The one year your neighbor, a stubborn man named Thomas, decided it was all nonsense and planted during the dark of the moon, his crop was meager and stunted. Coincidence? Maybe. But for you, it's a data point. It's confirmation. The universe has rules, and your job is not to question them, but to learn them and follow them for your own benefit. It's a bit like following a recipe. You don't need to understand the complex chemical reactions that make a cake rise to know that you have to add the baking soda. You just do it because the recipe says so, and you want cake. You look up at the sky, even though it's daytime, and the moon is an invisible ghost. You know it's there, starting its slow nightly journey. Its promise of growth feels like a quiet blessing on your fields. This belief gives you a sense of order in a chaotic world. The plagues, the famines, the whims of the local lord, these things are terrifyingly random. But the moon is predictable. It is faithful. Its cycles are a source of stability, a constant you can rely on. Believing that its reliable rhythm is mirrored in the soil beneath your feet makes the uncertain business of farming feel a little less like a gamble and a little more like a partnership. You are a tiny part of a grand, interconnected system, and as long as you play by its rules, it will provide. As above, so below isn't just a magical formula. It's a comforting assurance that the universe, in its own mysterious way, makes sense. The days have warmed. The sun is higher in the sky, and the memory of the winter's bone-deep chill is finally starting to fade. It is time. The soil, which your father and you have spent days laboriously turning over with heavy, clumsy wooden plows, maybe aided by a single precious ox if your family is fortunate, is now ready. It lies in dark, fragrant clods, waiting. But you don't just rush out and throw your seeds into the ground. The timing has to be perfect. All your hopes for the coming year, all your protection against the gnawing hunger of the next winter, are contained in the small leather sack of seeds you hold in your hand. This is your family's wealth, its future, and you can't afford to waste it. And so, you wait for the moon's permission. You've been watching the sky every night. After the last sliver of the old moon vanished, you endured the 3 nights of profound, moonless dark. Then it appeared, the thinnest, most delicate crescent, the new horn, low in the western sky just after sunset. That was the signal. The time of increase has begun. Over the next several nights, you watch it swell, growing from a shy sliver into a confident, glowing half-circle. This is the sweet spot. The moon is waxing. Its power to draw moisture and life upwards is growing stronger each night. and it's time to sow the crops that will bear their fruit in the open air. You're not just planting seeds. You're entrusting them to the moon's care. Tonight is the night. The sun has set, and the sky is a deep velvety blue. The half-moon hangs in the heavens, bathing the fields in that familiar, ethereal silver light. There's a strange sense of quiet purpose to the work. Planting by moonlight feels different from toiling under the hot, oppressive sun. It feels less like work and more like a ritual. You, your father, and your mother move in a slow, deliberate line across your narrow strip of field. Your father walks ahead, using a hoe to scratch a shallow furrow in the prepared soil. You follow behind, your hand dipping rhythmically into the leather sack tied at your waist. You take a small pinch of seeds, the precious barley that will become bread and ale, and let them fall from your fingers into the furrow. It's a gesture of faith. You let the seeds go, trusting the earth and the sky to do the rest. Your mother follows you, using the back of a rake to gently cover the seeds with a blanket of soil. You sow your most important crops this way: the barley, the wheat, the oats, the grains that form the backbone of your diet. These are plants that need to grow tall and strong, reaching for the sun. The waxing moon, you believe, gives them the initial upward surge they need to break through the soil and thrive. You also plant your peas and beans under this growing light. Their treasure is held in pods, high up on the vine, and you want to encourage that aerial growth. This isn't just some vague, general good feeling. It's a specific prescription for a specific type of plant. You are tailoring your farming practices to the very nature of the crop, as guided by the moon. This practice of timing sowing to the lunar phases is a core tenet of what would one day be called biodynamic farming, but for you, it's just farming. This is a solid historical fact. Guidance on moon phase planting is found in some of the earliest agricultural texts, like Pliny, the Elder's Natural History from ancient Rome, and the tradition was carried on robustly throughout the medieval period. Pliny specifically advised that beans should be sown during the first quarter of the moon, and that grains like wheat and barley benefit from being planted in the days leading up to the full moon. While the average peasant like you would not be reading Pliny, this ancient scholarly wisdom has trickled down through generations, becoming ingrained folk knowledge. You do it because it's how it's done, and it has been for 1,000 years. You also pay attention to another layer of celestial influence, the zodiac. This is a quirkier, more complex piece of the puzzle. While you don't have a detailed star chart, you know the basic rhythm. Your father knows, through observation and inherited wisdom, when the moon is passing through what he would call a watery sign like Cancer or Pisces. These are considered the most fertile and fruitful signs. Planting your beans when the waxing moon is in a watery sign is like getting a double bonus of cosmic encouragement. It's the absolute best-case scenario. Conversely, you would avoid planting when the moon is in a barren sign, like Leo or Gemini. Historians still argue about how widespread this detailed zodiacal knowledge was among the largely illiterate peasantry. Was it common knowledge, or was it the specialized domain of a village elder or a particularly astute farmer? For your family, your father has a rough sense of it, a kind of farmer's intuition passed down from his father. He might not know the name Pisces, but he knows that when the moon is in a certain patch of stars at this time of year, the beans grow better. As you reach the end of a row, you pause and look up at the half moon. It seems to look back, a silent, knowing overseer. There is a joke, if you could call it that you only plant what you were willing to have multiply. So you plant your grains and beans now, but you would never, ever plant thistles or other noxious weeds at this time, lest they take the moon's encouragement and completely overrun your fields. It's a simple, light-hearted expression of a deeply held belief. The moon is a powerful amplifier. It takes the intention you put into the ground and magnifies it. Right now, you are putting in the intention of abundance, of a full larder and a safe winter. You are whispering a prayer for life and growth, not with words, but with the motion of your hand, the scattering of seeds in the silver light. The work is hard on your back, and your fingers are stiff with the evening chill. But there's a sense of rightness to it, a feeling of being in sync with the great, slow-turning machinery of the cosmos. You are doing your part. Now it is up to the moon. The barley and beans are in the ground, tucked away under their earthy blanket, hopefully enjoying the upward pull of the waxing moon. For 2 weeks, you watched as the moon swelled to a glorious perfect circle, the full face that flooded your nights with so much light you could almost imagine it was a second, gentler daytime. It was a time of high energy, a peak of vitality in the fields, and you sometimes felt in yourself. But that peak is past. The slow process of decay has begun. Night by night, you see a sliver shaved off the moon's bright edge. The light is fading. The energy is turning. The time of increase is over, and the time of decrease is upon you. This shift doesn't bring a sense of dread, but rather a change in purpose. The moon's toolbox has different implements, and now it's time to use the ones for cutting back, for clearing, for removing. Your main task during the waning moon is a battle as old as farming itself, weeding. Under the full sun of midday, you are back in the fields, but your focus has changed. You are not nurturing, you are culling. You move slowly down the rows, your eyes scanning for the telltale shapes of thistle, nettle, and couch grass that are trying to steal water and life from your precious barley shoots, which are now tender green spikes emerging from the soil. When you pull a weed during the waning moon, you believe you are doing more than just physically removing it. You are working in sympathy with the cosmic trend of decrease. The fading light of the moon is a sign that things are being drawn down, that energy is retreating. By pulling the weeds now, you're ensuring they won't just grow back with vigor. You are, in a sense, cursing them, telling them their time is over. This is the exact opposite of the logic you used for planting. To pull weeds during a waxing moon would be a fool's errand. It would be like pruning a branch, only to have it sprout 2 more in its place. The moon's growing energy would encourage the roots you missed to re-sprout with a vengeance. But now, under the influence of the waning moon, you feel confident that the uprooted weeds will wither and die properly. Their life force is already in retreat, and you are simply helping it on its way. This is a historical fact of folk agriculture, the belief that the waning moon is the proper time for destroying unwanted growth was just as strong as the belief that the waxing moon was for encouraging desired growth. It's 2 sides of the same celestial coin. This principle of removal also dictates when you harvest certain crops. While you planted your beans and grains on a waxing moon to encourage their upward growth, you harvest your root vegetables, your turnips, carrots, and parsnips on a waning one. Remember the sap theory? You believe that as the moon wanes, the sap and life energy of the plant retreats downwards, concentrating in the root. Therefore, to harvest a turnip during the last quarter of the moon is to get it at its absolute best. Firm, dense, and packed with all the goodness the plant has to offer. A quirky tidbit of this belief, according to some old farming almanacs, was that root vegetables harvested at this time would not only taste better, but would also store longer through the winter, being less prone to shriveling or rot because their earth energy was at its peak. It's a perfectly consistent piece of internal logic. Historians still argue about the practical efficacy of these techniques. Could the subtle gravitational changes of the moon really have such a dramatic effect on weed growth or the quality of a turnip? Modern science would say it's highly unlikely. But the power of the belief itself had a tangible effect. It provided a structure, a calendar for tasks that needed doing anyway. It imposed a rhythm and discipline on the farmer's year. Whether the moon made the weeds weaker or not, the belief ensured that weeding was done regularly and systematically. It's a bit like a modern fitness plan that says you should do cardio on Mondays and strength training on Wednesdays. The specific scheduling might be arbitrary, but the fact that it gets you to the gym consistently is what produces the results. Your lunar calendar gets you into the fields, performing the right task at the right time. With a sense of cosmic purpose. The waning moon is also the time for other acts of subtraction. It's when you would prune your fruit trees, cutting away the dead or unproductive branches. The logic is the same. The tree's energy is low, its sap is down, so the wounds you create by cutting will bleed less and be less susceptible to disease. It's a time for cleaning and clearing. If a patch of land needs to be cleared of brambles and brush, you do it now. The act of destruction is aligned with the moon's fading light. There's even a joke your father makes with a grim sort of humor. As he sharpens his axe, the moon is shrinking, and soon our pig population will be too. It's a reminder that the autumn slaughter, the necessary reduction of livestock before the winter, is also a task best suited for the waning moon. It is an act of taking away, of making smaller, to ensure the survival of the whole dot as you toss a clump of uprooted thistle onto a growing pile to be burned. You feel a sense of satisfaction. You are not just cleaning the field. You are maintaining the essential balance of your small world. You encouraged life, and now you are managing death. It is all part of the same cycle. The moon, your silent partner, taught you when to give and now teaches you when to take away. Its ever-changing face is a constant reminder that life is not a steady, linear progression. It is an eternal rhythm of waxing and waning, of growth and decay, of sowing in silver light and culling in the fading darkness. The moon's influence doesn't stop at the edge of the cultivated fields. Its invisible rains guide not just the silent, rooted life of plants, but also the warm-blooded, breathing life of the animals that share your small patch of earth. Your livestock, the single precious cow that gives your family milk, the handful of chickens scratching in the dirt, the pig fattening in its sty, are as much a part of your farm's ecosystem as the barley and the beans. And you believe they, too, are subject to the great cosmic laws dictated by the moon's phases. Their health, fertility, and even the quality of their meat are all tied to that silver orb in the night sky. The logic follows the same familiar path. The waxing moon is for increase, and the waning moon is for decrease. This principle is applied to the breeding and birthing of your animals with unwavering conviction. If you want your cow to successfully conceive, you would wait for the waxing moon. The growing light and energy are believed to enhance fertility in both the male and female. It's a time of rising vitality, and you want your animals to partake in that cosmic surge. To try and breed an animal during a waning moon would be seen as foolish, a waste of effort. You would be working against the current, trying to create new life in a period of universal decline. When it comes to the actual birth, the full moon is considered the most powerful and auspicious time. Just as it represents the peak of the moon's light and energy, you believe it corresponds to a peak in fertility and the life force. A calf or a litter of piglets born under a full moon is thought to be stronger, healthier, and more likely to thrive. The village midwife would tell you the same is true for human babies. Her busiest nights are often when the moon is a perfect circle. This is a deeply ingrained piece of folklore, a historical fact that has persisted so strongly that even today, many farmers and some nurses in maternity wards will swear that the full moon brings a rush of births. While modern statistical studies have consistently failed to find any correlation, the belief itself remains as stubborn as a mule. For you, it's not a statistic, it's an observation. You remember the night your cow, Bess, gave birth to her last calf. It was a night of brilliant, almost overwhelming moonlight, and the calf was born strong and got to its feet within minutes. That's all the proof you need. The waning moon, the time of decrease, governs the other side of animal husbandry. Weaning a calf or a litter of piglets from their mother's milk is a task for this period. The logic is twofold. First, you believe. The process will be easier and cause less distress to both mother and young during a time of natural separation and retreat. Second, and more practically, it's thought that the mother's milk supply will dry up more quickly and cleanly when the moon's energy is fading. A quirky tidbit of this belief is that castration of male animals like piglets and lambs must, without question, be done during the waning moon. The procedure, you believe, will involve less bleeding and the wound will heal faster, as the animal's life force is not surging upwards, but is in a state of calm retreat. To do it during a waxing or full moon would be to invite disaster, excessive bleeding, infection, and possibly the death of a valuable animal. Historians still argue about how much of this animal lore was practical observation, dressed up in cosmic reasoning versus pure superstition. For instance, slaughtering an animal for meat was also strictly governed by the moon. You would always slaughter on a waning moon. The primary reason given was that the meat would be better less watery and more flavorful, as the animals' fluids, like the sap in a tree, were believed to have retreated. Furthermore, the preserved meat salted, smoked, or dried was thought to cure better and be less prone to spoilage. But there might be a practical, non-lunar reason this became tradition. Farmers would often slaughter in the autumn, as the moon waned towards the winter solstice. This was also when the weather was turning colder, which would naturally help in preserving the meat. The moon's phase might have just been a convenient celestial marker for the changing of the seasons, and the arrival of cooler, safer temperatures for butchery. It's the classic chicken and egg problem of folklore. Did the belief create the practice, or did the practice create the belief? For you, standing in the farmyard, throwing scraps to the chickens, this is not an academic debate. It's a set of rules for managing your most valuable assets. These animals are your walking, breathing larder. They are your source of milk, eggs, muscle power, and, eventually, meat to see you through the lean months. You cannot afford to take risks. You cannot afford to experiment. You follow the rules that your father learned from his father, rules that are as much a part of your farming inheritance as the small plot of land itself. You watch the pig snuffling contentedly in its pen. It is growing fat and healthy. You know that its life is unknowingly following a script written by the moon. It was likely conceived on a waxing moon, born near a full one, and will meet its end on a waning one. This isn't cruelty. It's order. It's the proper, time-tested way of doing things that ensures the animal is healthy, the meat is good, and your family will be fed. The moon is your silent, uncredited partner in animal husbandry, its steady rhythm bringing a sense of control and predictability to the uncertain world of livestock management. The work is hard, and the days are long. You wake in the dark, you toil under the sun, and you collapse onto your straw pallet not long after dusk. But the physical world of fields and fences and animals is not the only farm you have to tend. According to the wisdom of your time, your own body is a small holding, a microcosm of the universe, with its own internal seasons, tides, and delicate balances. And just as the moon governs the sap in the trees and the fertility of your livestock, it is also the undisputed governor of the fluids inside you, the vital humors that determine your health, your mood, and even your sanity. This isn't a fringe belief. It is the absolute bedrock of medieval medicine. The theory of the four humors is a historical fact, as central to your world as the theory of germs is to the modern one. It was inherited from the ancient Greeks, specifically Hippocrates and Galen, and for over 1,000 years, it was the undisputed law of medicine. The doctrine states that the human body contains 4 essential fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A healthy person has these four humors in perfect balance. Illness, both physical and mental, is caused by an imbalance, an excess, or a deficiency of one of these fluids. Each humor is associated with a season, an element, and a temperament. Blood is hot and moist, like spring and air, making you cheerful and optimistic, sanguine. Phlegm is cold and moist, like winter and water, making you calm and unemotional, phlegmatic. Yellow bile is hot and dry, like summer and fire, making you ambitious and short-tempered, choleric. And black bile is cold and dry, like autumn and earth, making you thoughtful and melancholic. So where does the moon fit into this elegant, if entirely incorrect, system? The moon, as you know, is the master of all things cool and moist. It pulls on the tides, it governs the dampness of the earth, and therefore it has a particular and powerful influence over the two moist humors in your body, blood and phlegm. You believe that as the moon waxes towards full, its power increases, causing the moist humors within you to swell and rise, just like the ocean tide. This is why you feel more energetic, more robust, more sanguine during the waxing and full moon. Your blood, the very essence of life, is running higher. But this swelling can also be dangerous. If you are already prone to an excess of blood, the full moon could push you over the edge, causing nosebleeds, fevers, or even a stroke as the humor boils over. This is why lunar timing was absolutely critical for the most common of all medieval medical procedures, bloodletting. A physician, or more likely the local barber surgeon, would never dream of bleeding a patient without first consulting the phase of the moon. To let blood during a waxing or full moon, when the body's fluids were already high and agitated, was considered extremely dangerous. It could lead to an uncontrollable loss of blood. The proper time for bleeding was during the waning moon. As the moon's influence receded, the body's humors were thought to be calmer and lower, making the procedure safer and more effective. You were working with the body's natural ebb tide, gently helping it to release its excess rather than trying to open a floodgate. A quirky tidbit related to this is the zodiac man, a diagram that appeared in many medical texts and almanacs. It showed a human figure with the signs of the zodiac drawn on different parts of the body they were believed to govern: Aries for the head, Taurus for the neck, Gemini for the arms, and so on. A surgeon would use this chart in conjunction with the lunar calendar. For example, if you had a problem with your leg, governed by Aquarius, the surgeon would have to wait for a day when the moon was waning and was not currently passing through the sign of Aquarius. To cut into a limb while the moon was in its corresponding sign was to invite certain disaster, as the moon's influence would be dangerously concentrated in that exact spot. Historians still argue about how much of this complex astrological medicine trickled down to the peasant level. While you probably wouldn't have a detailed zodiac man chart tacked to your wall, the basic principle that the moon affects your body was common knowledge. You feel it. When you have a head cold and are full of phlegm, you might feel much worse during the waxing moon, as if the moon itself is making the congestion heavier and more oppressive. You know instinctively that the full moon can make people strange. The very word lunatic, from the Latin luna for moon, is a testament to the deeply held belief that the full moon could cause madness. It was thought to agitate the moist humors in the brain, leading to unpredictable behavior, seizures, and insanity. The full moon was when the village drunk was more likely to start a brawl, when your neighbor with a nervous disposition might be found muttering to himself in the fields, that you think about your own body, feeling the ache in your lower back from a day of weeding. Is that an imbalance of black bile? A touch of melancholy? Or is it just a sore muscle? To you, there's not much difference. The physical and the emotional are deeply intertwined. You are not a machine made of separate parts. You are a holistic system, a small farm that needs to be kept in balance. The moon is not an external decorative object. It is an active participant in your own biology. Its rhythms pulse within your own veins. Its moist, cool nature tempers the hot, dry passions of the sun inside you. Understanding this connection is a key to staying healthy. It's why you rest when you feel a fever coming on during a full moon, and why you might ask the wise woman for a drying herbal remedy. Are tending to the farm of yourself, and the moon is your indispensable, if sometimes troublesome, foreman. The sound of the church bell rolls across the fields, a clear, metallic note that calls the village to Sunday Mass. It's a sound of order, of authority, of a power far greater than the local lord. You put down your tools, wipe the worst of the dirt from your hands and face, and pull on the slightly less patched tunic you save for this one day of the week. As you walk towards the stone church, the only truly permanent building for miles around, you enter a world with a different set of rules and a different calendar. Here, inside these cool, dark walls, the moon is a complicated and often contradictory subject. The village priest is a stern man, his face carved with lines of piety and more often than not, disapproval. From his pulpit, he preaches about the one true God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. He warns you, in thundering tones, against the dangers of superstition and paganism. To worship the sun or the moon, he declares, is a grave sin. It is to turn your back on God and bow down to an inanimate object, a mere bauble in God's creation. He speaks of the foolishness of those who look for signs and omens in the sky, who believe that their fate is written in the stars, rather than held in the hands of the Almighty. He might tell a story of how a saint miraculously healed a man who, the pagan moon worshippers had left for dead. A clear lesson that faith, not folklore, is the path to salvation. You listen and you nod. You understand the priest's words. You are a good Christian. You say your prayers, you confess your sins, and you fear the fires of hell. You would never say you worship the moon. That would be absurd. Worshipping is for God. The moon is different. It's a tool. It's a guide. It's a partner. You don't pray to your plow, but you take care of it. You understand how it works, and you use it to survive. In your mind, that's what you do with the moon. You are not bowing to it. You are simply reading the instructions God wrote into the rhythms of his own creation. Surely, God put the moon in the sky for a reason, and not just for decoration. He made it pull the tides. He made it swell and shrink. To ignore these clear signals would not just be foolish, it would be ungrateful. This is the quiet compromise you and your neighbors make, the mental balancing act that allows your folk wisdom and your Christian faith to coexist. You partition your beliefs. The priest is in charge of your soul's eternal salvation. The moon is in charge of your turnip harvest. As long as the two don't directly contradict each other, you can keep them in separate boxes in your mind. The historical fact is that the church itself was engaged in a long and complex process of absorbing and rebranding pagan traditions. Rather than trying to stamp out a popular festival, it was often easier to build a church on the site of a sacred grove and rededicate the festival to a Christian saint. This process of syncretism was happening on a grand scale, and your personal blend of moon lore and Christianity is just a small, everyday example of it. The greatest irony, of course, is that the church itself is completely dependent on the moon. The priest can rail against pagan moon-gazing all he wants, but the most important date in his entire liturgical year, the absolute pinnacle of the Christian story, Easter, is a lunar holiday. Its date is not fixed in the solar calendar. It falls on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. This complex calculation, known as the computus, was a subject of immense scholarly and theological importance. Monks filled entire volumes with tables and charts, all dedicated to correctly predicting the phases of the moon so that Easter could be celebrated on the proper day. A quirky, and at times surprisingly vicious, tidbit of church history is the long-running dispute over how to calculate Easter. The Celtic Church in places like Ireland and Scotland used an older, different lunar calculation from the one used in Rome, leading to the absurdity of different kingdoms celebrating the resurrection of Christ on different Sundays. The Synod of Whitby in 664 was a major church council held in England, specifically to resolve this issue and align the English Church with the Roman lunar calculation. Kings and bishops argued passionately not about the nature of God, but about the correct way to track the moon. So, while your village priest may dismiss your lunar observations as simple-minded superstition, his own superiors in the church hierarchy were, in their own way, just as obsessed with the moon as you are. Historians still argue about how aware the average medieval peasant was of this seeming hypocrisy. Did you see the connection? Did you ever want to raise your hand during the sermon and say, "But Father, don't you need the full moon to know when we have to fast for Lent?" You probably wouldn't. To challenge the priest would be unthinkable. But the knowledge is there, a quiet, unspoken fact. The church uses the moon for its most sacred festival. You use the moon for your most sacred task, feeding your family. In your mind, it's all part of the same divinely ordered system. God created the sun to rule the day and the moon to rule the night, and he created the church to guide your soul. You see no conflict. You see a beautiful, interconnected whole. The priest sees a dangerous slide into paganism. You see a practical guide to life. You leave the church, linking in the bright sunlight, your soul tended to for another week. Now you can go back to tending your fields, your mind once again, turning to the familiar, reliable, and deeply practical wisdom of the silent orb that governs your world. The benevolent, nurturing aspect of the moon, the gentle midwife to your crops, and the quiet partner in your work, is the face you rely on for your survival. But you know, with a certainty that raises the hairs on your arms, that the moon has another face. When it swells to its absolute peak, that perfect, luminous circle, its power isn't always gentle or kind. The full moon is a time of culmination, of amplification. It takes everything in the world, both good and bad, and turns up the volume. While it might bring a healthy calf into the world, you also know it can bring madness, mischief, and monsters out of the shadows. On the nights of the full moon, there's a different energy in the air. The world is lit in such brilliant, stark detail that there are no soft, forgiving shadows. Everything is either bathed in a ghostly white light or plunged into sharp, absolute blackness. It's a disorienting, uncanny light, and it seems to stir a certain restlessness in the world. You've seen it yourself. The village dogs, usually quiet at night, are more likely to bark at nothing, their howls echoing across the fields in a mournful chorus. You feel it in your own sleep, which is often lighter and more disturbed, filled with strange and vivid dreams. This isn't just your imagination. The belief that the full moon disrupts sleep and causes strange behavior is an ancient one found across countless cultures. This is the time when the barrier between your world and other worlds feels thinnest. The full moon is the high holiday for all the things the priest warns you about. It's when the restless spirits of the dead are said to be most active, when the mischievous five folk are most likely to lead, traveler astray into a bog, and when darker things might venture closer to the warmth and light of the village. The fear is palpable. On a full moon night, your door is barred a little more firmly. You might even make the sign of the cross over the latch before you go to sleep. The most famous and feared of all the moon's monstrous children is, of course, the werewolf. The historical fact is that belief in werewolves, or lycanthropy, was widespread and deeply serious in medieval Europe. It wasn't a silly movie trope. It was a genuine and terrifying possibility. Learned men wrote treatises on it, and church courts occasionally tried people accused of being werewolves. The creature was the perfect embodiment of the full moons. Terrifying power. A human being, a neighbor perhaps, whose inner, bestial nature was unleashed by the moon's rays, forcing them into a horrific, violent transformation. The idea that the moon could override a person's God-given soul and turn them into a ravening beast was a profound violation of the natural order. It was proof that the moon's influence wasn't just agricultural. It was primal and dangerous. Don't know if you've ever seen a werewolf, but you've heard the stories. A traveler found mauled on the road, his body torn in a way no normal wolf could manage. A shepherd's flock decimated in a single night of impossible carnage. These stories are told in hushed tones around the fire, and they always happen, under the light of a full moon. It's the ultimate cautionary tale about the moon's power over the fluids of the body. If it can swell the humors in your brain to make you mad, it's not such a great leap to believe it could swell the animalistic passions within you until they burst forth in a tide of fur and fangs. A quirky, and rather grim, tidbit from this lore is the supposed cure for lycanthropy. While some beliefs held that it was a demonic curse and incurable, others suggested that it could be treated with the same logic that governed everything else. One method was to exhaust the person during the day with hard physical labor in the house. Hope they would be too tired to transform at night. Another, more extreme remedy involved striking the werewolf 3 times on the forehead with a knife, a sort of violent, reverse exorcism. Others believed that calling the person by their Christian baptismal name could break the spell. A clear clash between the pagan power of the moon and the sanctified power of the church. Historians still argue about the origins of the werewolf. Myth. Was it a way of explaining serial killers or exceptionally violent individuals in a pre-psychological age? Was it rooted in clinical conditions, like hypertrichosis, which causes excessive hair growth, or porphyria, whose symptoms can include reddish teeth and neurological damage? Or was it simply a manifestation of the deep-seated fear of the wilderness and the animal nature that humanity felt it had only barely escaped? Whatever the reason for you, the werewolf is a real and present danger, the moon's most terrifying. Sermon on the fragility of man. So while you welcome the full moon's light for the extra hours of work it might grant you during the harvest, you also respect its power. You understand that it is a double-edged sword. It is a force of nature, and like any great force, the sea, the wind, the fire, it is inherently neutral. It can nurture, and it can destroy. It can illuminate, and it can reveal horrors. It amplifies what is already there. If there is life waiting in a seed, it will amplify it. If there is madness lurking in a mind, it will amplify that too. As you lie in your bed, with the silver light pouring through the cracks in the shutter, you pull your thin blanket a little tighter. The moon is full. It is beautiful, and it is terrible, and you know better than to ever take its power for granted. Your youngest brother has a fever. He's been listless for 2 days, his forehead hot to the touch, and his breathing shallow. The priest has visited, said a prayer, and sprinkled a little holy water, but the boy's condition hasn't changed. Your mother, her face etched with worry, finally makes the decision. She sends you on an errand, not to the church, but to a small, isolated cottage on the edge of the woods. This is where the wise woman lives. She is not a witch, not in the terrifying sense of the word. She is a healer, a repository of ancient knowledge that has been passed down from mother to daughter for generations. She is the village's unofficial pharmacist and doctor, and her practice is governed by one cardinal rule. The moon is the key to all medicine. You arrive at the low-roofed cottage, a plume of fragrant smoke curling from a hole in its thatched roof. The wise woman is old, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, but her eyes are sharp and clear. You explain the situation, and she listens patiently, nodding. She doesn't need to examine your brother. She knows the fevers that come with the dampness of spring. She turns to the dozens of bunches of dried herbs hanging from her rafters, filling the small space with a complex, earthy aroma. She selects a few yarrow elderflower and peppermint, but before she bundles them for you, she asks a critical question. What did the moon look like last night? You tell her it was just past the first quarter, a strong, waxing half-moon. She nods again, satisfied. Good, she says. These were gathered at the right time. They will be strong. This is the central tenet of her craft and a solid historical fact of folk medicine. An herb's healing power is not a fixed property. It is entirely dependent on the phase of the moon under which it was gathered. The moon, which governs the rise and fall of sap and moisture, is believed to concentrate the plant's medicinal virtues, its virtues, in different parts at different times. The wise woman's knowledge is a complex, invisible pharmacopoeia timed to the lunar clock. For herbs whose power lies in their leaves or flowers, like the ones she is giving you for the fever, the rule is absolute. They must be gathered during the waxing moon. As the moon's light grows, its upward pull is drawing the sap and the plant's essential energy up into its aerial parts. The leaves are fuller, the flowers more vibrant, their medicinal qualities at their absolute peak. To gather peppermint. For a tea during a waning moon would be, in her eyes, to harvest a hollow shell of a plant. The virtue would have already retreated downwards, leaving the leaves weak and ineffective. She is essentially harvesting the plant's energy, and she has to do it when that energy is in the right place. Conversely, for plants whose medicine lies in their roots like burdock, for purifying the blood, or comfrey for mending bones, the opposite is true. These must be gathered during the waning moon, especially in the last few days before the new moon, the dark of the moon. This is when the plant's energy has retreated from the leaves and stems and is concentrated deep in the earth. The root is believed to be swollen with power, dense and potent. A quirky tidbit of this practice involves not just the phase, but the exact time of day. Some traditions held that for maximum potency, roots should be dug not just during the waning moon, but at night, when the separation from the sun's influence was complete and the plant's connection to the earthy, feminine power of the moon and soil was at its strongest. Historians still argue about the precise origins of this herbal lore. How much was genuine trial and error discovery of plant properties, and how much was a later application of the as above, so below philosophy? It's likely a blend. Perhaps ancient healers noticed that certain flowers were more fragrant at a particular time of month, or that some roots seemed fleshier after a period of dry weather, and they mapped these observations onto the most reliable clock they had, the moon. Over centuries, the system became more rigid and codified, a set of unbreakable rules. The wise woman's knowledge is a perfect example of this. She doesn't know why yarrow is more potent on a waxing moon in a scientific sense, but she knows that a fever tea, made with it, works better. Her results validate her methods. As she wraps the herbs for you in a piece of clean linen, she gives you careful instructions. The tea must be brewed and given to your brother in the evening as the moon begins to rise, to align the act of healing with the moon's growing influence. This is another layer of sympathetic logic. You are not just using a medicinal substance. You are performing a small ritual to bring the patient back into harmony with the cosmic rhythms. This is a far cry from the priest's single prayer. It's a holistic treatment plan involving specific substances gathered at a specific time, to be administered at a specific time, all designed to work with the universe's own healing forces. You thank the wise woman, leaving the small payment your mother sent, a few eggs and a small lump of cheese. You hurry back home, clutching the fragrant bundle of herbs. It feels like more than just dried leaves. It feels like a packet of concentrated moonlight, a dose of celestial power prescribed by a woman who understands the secret conversations between the sky and the earth. You are holding a tangible piece of a belief system that sees the entire world as a single, interconnected pharmacy, with the moon as its chief pharmacist, telling you which medicines are potent and when they are ready to be used. The fever breaks, thanks to the wise woman's herbs and your mother's care. Your brother is weak, but he is on the mend, and a sense of relief settles back over your small household. The rhythm of work reasserts itself, and soon you find yourself beside your father at the edge of the woods that border your village's common lands. It's late autumn. The harvest is in, the fields are bare, and the air has a new sharp bite to it. It's time to lay in the supply of firewood for the coming winter, but today's task is different. Your father is selecting a tree not for the hearth, but for timber. A section of the cowshed wall is rotting, and it needs to be replaced with a solid new beam before the heavy snows arrive. He doesn't just walk up to the first, straight-looking oak and start chopping. He is as careful and deliberate as the wise woman, selecting her herbs. He inspects several trees, walking around them, assessing their height and girth. But his final decision rests not on what he sees in the daylight, but on what he knows about the night sky. He would never, under any circumstances, fell a tree for timber during the waxing moon. He would sooner try to build a wall out of water. This is a piece of folk wisdom so deeply ingrained, so universally accepted, that to violate it would be an act of profound foolishness. The logic is the same one that governs your planting and your health, the sap. During the waxing and full moon, you believe the moon's upward pull draws the sap, the tree's blood, high into the trunk and branches. The tree is alive. If you cut it down then, the timber you get will be heavy, waterlogged, and green. As it dries, it will twist, crack, and warp, making it useless for construction. Worse, the sugary sap makes the wood irresistible to woodworm and fungus. A beam cut on a waxing moon, your father would say, is a beam that comes with its own rot. It is unlucky wood, destined to fail not, so you wait. You track the moon as it shrinks from its full glory, night by night. The perfect time to fell timber is during the dark of the moon, those few nights when the moon is completely absent from the sky, just before the new crescent appears. This is the period of maximum decrease, when the moon's influence is at its absolute lowest ebb. During this time, you believe the tree's sap has retreated deep down into its roots, leaving the trunk and branches relatively dry and dormant. The tree is, in a sense, asleep. This is when you strike. Timber cut during the dark of the moon is believed to be harder, stronger, and significantly lighter. It will dry straight and true, and because it has less sap, it will be naturally resistant to pests and decay. It is stable, reliable, dead wood perfect for building. This belief is a solid historical fact, documented extensively in forestry and agricultural texts for centuries. The Roman writer Vegetius, in his work on military matters, advised that the timber for building siege engines should only be felled after the 15th of the month, i.e., on the wane and preferably during the dark of the moon, to ensure its strength and durability. This wasn't just peasant folklore, it was engineering advice. The tradition was so strong that well into the 18th and 19th centuries, logging contracts would sometimes specify that trees must be felled during the waning moon of winter. A quirky and rather poetic tidbit of this tradition relates to the specific qualities of wood destined for different purposes. If you were cutting wood for a musical instrument, like a lute or a fiddle, some believed it was best to fell the tree not just during the waning moon, but on a clear, cold, and windy night. The idea was that the cold would make the wood denser, and the wind would blow the last of the moisture out of the grain, resulting in a more resonant and beautiful tone. The wood would, in effect, remember the music of the wind in its fibers. Historians still argue about the scientific basis for these practices. Is there any truth to it? Interestingly, some modern scientific studies have shown that there is a slight, measurable difference in the water content of trees that corresponds to lunar phases, though it's far less dramatic than the folklore would suggest. The gravitational pull of the moon does affect the water table and can subtly influence the movement of water within the tree. It's possible that this very real, albeit small, effect was observed by ancient peoples and then magnified and codified into the rigid system of rules you follow. It might be one of the rare cases where the folk belief has a tiny, flickering echo in modern science. Today, the moon is just a few days from disappearing entirely. It is the perfect time. Your father has selected a tall, straight ash tree. He and you take turns with the axe. The work is hard, the rhythmic thunk of the blade biting into the wood echoing in the quiet forest. You don't think about gravitational pull or water content. You think about the stories your grandfather told. You of the neighbor who built a pigsty with waxing moon wood, only to have it collapse in the first winter storm. You think about the satisfying heft of a dry, solid beam versus the damp, heavy feel of green wood. You are following a rule that has been tested by generations. It is a practical tradition that ensures the things you build will last. When the tree finally groans, shudders, and crashes to the forest floor, there is a sense of accomplishment. You have not just felled a tree. You have harvested timber at the precise, correct moment, according to a celestial schedule. You have worked in harmony with the cosmos to provide shelter and security for your family and your livestock. As you begin the long process of trimming the branches, you feel confident that the beam you hew from this trunk will be strong and true. The moon, even in its absence from the sky, has given its blessing. The air grows colder still. The last of the leaves have fallen from the trees, leaving a stark latticework of branches against a pale, often gray sky. The work of the year is mostly done. The grains are threshed and stored. The winter vegetables are in the root cellar, and the firewood is stacked high against the cottage wall. There is a sense of completion, of drawing inwards. But one final, frantic period of work remains, bringing in the very last of the harvest. This might be late ripening, apples, or perhaps a final cutting of hay if the weather has been kind. And for this task, you receive a special gift from the sky. As autumn deepens, a particular full moon rises that seems different from all the others. It's called the harvest moon. This isn't a different celestial body. It's a specific astronomical phenomenon. The harvest moon is the full moon that occurs closest to the autumn equinox. What makes it special is not its brightness or its color, though it often does appear a magnificent, deep orange due to atmospheric haze, but its behavior. For several nights in a row, around the time of the full harvest moon, the moonrise happens at almost the same time, just after sunset. This is a historical fact of astronomy. Normally, the moon rises about 50 minutes later each night. But due to the shallow angle of the ecliptic, the moon's path across the sky, in autumn, this difference shrinks to as little as 20 or 30 minutes in the northern hemisphere. The practical effect of this is breathtaking. Just as the sun's light begins to fail, the full or nearly full moon is already rising in the east, big and bright. It means that for several consecutive nights, there is no period of true, deep darkness between sunset and moonrise. The daylight fades and is almost immediately replaced by brilliant moonlight. For a world without artificial lighting, this is nothing short of a miracle. It's a gift of extra hours of light, a celestial lamp provided at the exact moment you need it most. It allows you and your family to stay out in the fields, working long after the sun has disappeared, to bring in the last precious bits of food before the first hard frost or the autumn rains can ruin them. You're in the apple orchard now, a small stand of gnarled trees your grandfather planted. The fruit is ripe, and you need to get it all picked and into baskets. The days are getting noticeably shorter, and under normal circumstances, you'd have to stop work at dusk. But tonight, as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of pink and orange, the huge glowing disk of the harvest moon is already clearing the treetops on the opposite horizon. The transition from daylight to moonlight is seamless. The world is never plunged into darkness. The silvery light illuminates the apples still hanging on the branches, making them look like pale lanterns. You can see well enough to climb the ladder, to judge the ripeness of a fruit, to place it gently in the basket without bruising it. This experience solidifies your belief in a benevolent, purposeful cosmos. It feels like a deliberate act of divine providence. Of course, the moon would offer its light so generously at harvest time. It has been your partner all year, nurturing the seeds, helping you weed, guiding your hand. Now, at the triumphant conclusion of the agricultural year, it provides this final, crucial blessing. It's not just a happy coincidence of orbital mechanics. It's a sign of favor, a reward for a year of hard labor. The priest might talk about God's grace in the abstract, but this feels like grace made manifest, a tangible and useful gift. A quirky and rather charming tidbit is the name given to the next full moon, the one following the harvest moon. It's often called the hunter's moon. The logic is the same. It also rises early and provides extra hours of light. This light was said to be perfect for hunters, allowing them to track and kill game in the now bare fields, fattening up for winter. It was also the traditional time to hunt foxes and other predators that might threaten the livestock that were now being brought closer to home for the winter. It's another example of how the moon's behavior was woven into the practical, seasonal tasks necessary for survival. Historians still argue about how much of the specialness of the harvest moon was astronomical reality versus a kind of confirmation bias. Since the harvest was the most critical and joyous time of the year, were people simply paying more attention to the moon, projecting their own feelings of abundance and gratitude onto it? It's a difficult question to answer. For you, there is no debate. The proof is right in front of your eyes. Last month, when the sun went down, you were plunged into a darkness that forced you inside. This month, the darkness is held at bay. You can work. You can see. The light allows you to secure the food that will keep your family from starving in February. It's the difference between success and failure, between a full cellar and a hungry winter. The work is exhausting, but it's done with a sense of urgency and gratitude. Your whole family is out, moving through the silvery light, their voices low and purposeful. The only sounds are the rustle of leaves, the soft thud of apples being placed in baskets, and the distant hoot of an owl. You pause for a moment, leaning against the ladder, and look up at the magnificent lunar disk. It seems so close, so immense. You feel a sense of connection, of partnership. This isn't just a rock in the sky. It is your watchman, your calendar, your foreman, and tonight, your great celestial lantern. It has seen you through the entire year, from the first hopeful planting to this final grateful gathering. And its light feels like a promise. The cycle is complete, the work is done, and you will be safe for another winter. Years pass, you grow older. The rhythms of the moon, the fields, and the seasons are as much a part of you as your own heartbeat. The knowledge you hold in your mind, when to plant, when to call, when to fell a tree, was given to you by your father, just as it was given to him by his. It is a river of oral tradition, flowing from one generation to the next, as constant as the moon itself. But slowly, subtly, a new force is entering your world. It's a force that will take this unwritten, spoken wisdom and give it a new kind of power, a new kind of authority. It is the power of the printed word. One day, a traveling chapman, a peddler of small goods, comes to your village. Among his wares, ribbons, knives, and trinkets, is something new, a small, cheaply printed booklet called an almanac. It's not a book for a lord or a bishop. It's thin, printed on rough paper with crude woodcut illustrations. And it costs a penny, a significant but not impossible sum. Your father, who has learned a little of his letters from a charitable priest, decides to buy one. That evening, by the light of the fire, he slowly, haltingly reads from it. And what he reads is astonishing. It's all your knowledge, all your family's inherited wisdom, but now it is written down, set in type, and stamped with the authority of print. The almanac has a calendar, of course, marking the saints' days and the church festivals. But right alongside it, it has the phases of the moon for the entire year, clearly depicted with little circles, half circles, and crescents. It tells you the exact days of the new moon, the first quarter, the full moon, and the last quarter. This is a revelation. You no longer have to guess or rely on a clear night to check the moon's progress. The information is right there, predicted for the whole year. And then comes the truly amazing part, the husbandry section. It tells you, in plain language, what you have always known. In the increase of the moon, your father reads slowly, it is good to sow all such grain and herbs as you would have grow apace. And later, in the wane of the moon, fell timber for building, for it will be harder and drier. This is a pivotal moment, a historical fact of immense importance in the transition from the medieval to the early modern world. The printing press, invented in the mid-15th century, didn't just print Bibles. It churned out vast quantities of cheap, popular literature, and almanacs were the #1 bestseller, second only to the Bible itself. For the first time, the ancient oral traditions of agricultural moon lore were being codified, standardized, and distributed on a mass scale. Your personal, local, family knowledge was now being validated and reinforced by a seemingly authoritative, scientific text. The almanac contains more than just planting advice. It has the zodiac man, the very same diagram the learned physicians used, showing which part of the body was governed by which celestial sign. It has weather predictions, often based on the moon's phase. A wet moon betokeneth rain, it might say. It offers medical advice, echoing the wise woman's wisdom. Gather herbs for drying in the increase of the moon, but dig roots in the wane. It is a complete instruction manual for living your life in harmony with the cosmos, and it confirms everything you've ever been taught. A quirky and very popular feature of these almanacs was the inclusion of prophecies and predictions for the year ahead. Authored by a named astrologer, a figure who gained a kind of celebrity status, these sections would predict plagues, famines, the deaths of kings, and the outcomes of wars, all based on complex astrological charts and the movements of the planets and the moon. While the church officially frowned upon such divination, the public couldn't get enough of it. It made the cosmos feel like a dramatic story, and the almanac was your program. Historians still argue about the true impact of these almanacs. Did they simply record existing folk beliefs, or did they actively shape and spread them? The answer is likely both. In some ways, they acted as a great standardizer. Regional variations in moon lore might have been smoothed out as the printed word from London or another major city became the accepted standard. But more importantly, they gave the old beliefs a new lease on life and a veneer of scholarly respectability. What was once something my grandfather used to say was now what the almanac advises. The knowledge felt more solid, more official. It wasn't just superstition anymore. It was printed in a book, right next to the dates for Easter, for you. This little booklet is a treasure. It doesn't necessarily teach you anything you didn't already know in your bones, but it affirms it. It makes you feel connected to a wider world of people who all live by the same rules. The farmer in the next county over, the shepherd in the distant hills, they are all reading this same advice, looking at the same moon, and felling their timber in the wane. It bridges the gap between the oral tradition of the peasantry and the written tradition of the scholar. It takes the wisdom you can see with your own eyes, the tide, the growing beans, the healthy calf, and places it within a grand, unified system that seems both ancient and cutting edge. It is the wisdom of the moon, finally given a voice that could be held in your hands. And as literacy slowly increases over the coming decades, this voice will only grow louder, carrying the moon's agricultural reign deep into the modern world. The almanac becomes a fixture in your life and in the life of your children and their children after them. It sits on a mantelpiece, its pages growing soft and smudged with use. Each year, a new one replaces the old, but the wisdom inside remains stubbornly, wonderfully the same. The world outside your cottage begins to change in ways you could never imagine. New tools of iron replace the old wooden ones. New crops arrive from strange and distant lands. Men of science begin to speak of the world not as a great living body, but as a machine, a clockwork of soulless mathematical laws. They have new explanations for the tides, for the weather, for the growth of a plant, explanations full of numbers and Latin words that have nothing to do with sympathy or NNT. Motherly moon, and yet the almanac remains. Your world begins to blur, the sharp edges of your daily life softening as you fade from a person into a memory, a ghost of history. The you we have been following, the peasant with calloused hands and an intimate knowledge of the night sky, dissolves into the great, flowing river of your descendants. But your knowledge does not dissolve with you. It clings on, passed down through generations, a stubborn counter-rhythm to the frantic forward march of progress. While learned men in universities mock the old ways as foolish superstition, the farmer in the field, the gardener in their patch, still glances at the sky or consults the little booklet before putting a seed in the ground. This persistence is the most surprising historical fact of all. Your penny almanac is the direct ancestor of publications like the Old Farmer's Almanac, first published in 1792 and still printed today. Pick one up and you will find, nestled between advertisements for modern tractors and satellite weather, forecasts the same ancient advice. It will have a calendar with the moon's phases clearly marked. It will have the zodiac man. And under gardening, it will tell you, in language barely changed from the booklet your father first read by the fire, to plant your above-ground crops during the waxing moon and your root crops during the waning one. It seems some ideas are just too useful or too comforting to die. It's a bit like a modern weather app. The predictions might not always be spot on, but checking it makes you feel like you have some control. Even more remarkably, your entire worldview has been reborn in the modern era under a new name, biodynamic farming. This is a quirky and increasingly popular fringe movement that is, in essence, a direct and faithful reconstruction of your agricultural faith. Started in the 1920s by a philosopher named Rudolf Steiner, it treats the farm as a single living organism, interconnected with the wider cosmos. Biodynamic farmers plant, cultivate, and harvest strictly according to a celestial calendar that tracks not just the phases of the moon, but its journey through the zodiac. They speak of the moon's influence on water and plant growth with a conviction that you would find perfectly familiar. They even use special herbal preparations, sometimes buried in cow horns, to absorb earth energies, which would have made perfect sense to your village wise woman. The fancy biodynamic wine that sells for a fortune in expensive restaurants is produced using the very same lunar logic that governed your humble barley field. Historians and sociologists still argue whether the endurance of moon planting is a hun, testament to its subtle effectiveness, a form of cultural nostalgia, or simply a psychological comfort in an uncertain world. Is there a genuine, if small, scientific effect related to water tables and gravitational pull? Or are we just drawn to the idea of a world that operates on such elegant, mystical principles? The debate may never be settled. But what is certain is that the echo of your beliefs is all around us. It's in the gardener who swears their tomatoes are better when planted on the wax. It's in the persistent folklore of the full moon's effect on sleep and strange behavior. It's even in the casual way a modern person might check their horoscope, a fleeting, secular nod to that same ancient principle that has guided your every action. As above, so below. The world has changed. The night is no longer dark. It is ablaze with electric light that blots out all but the brightest stars. We have clocks that can measure a billionth of a second. We have science that can explain the chemical processes in a single plant cell. We have, it seems, replaced the moon's wisdom with our own. But the moon is still there. And as you fade, completely now, a final whispering echo in the long corridor of time, you can rest in the knowledge that your work was not forgotten. You listen to the moon, and in its silent, rhythmic dance of silver light and deep darkness, you found a way to survive. You found a way to make sense of the world. And that is a kind of wisdom that never truly goes out of date. And so, our journey back in time comes to its gentle end. Let the story of that medieval world, with its hardships and its deep, earthy wisdom, begin to soften and drift away. Let the scent of damp earth and wood smoke dissolve from your imagination, replaced by the familiar, comfortable quiet of your own room. The world of the peasant, so governed by the anxious and watchful eye of the moon, can recede now, leaving behind only the calm and the quiet of your own breath, the slow and steady rhythm of your own well-deserved rest. Feel the weight of thee, blanket that covers you, a comforting presence in the peaceful darkness, and allow the gentle pull of sleep to draw you down into its own quiet tide. The great, slow-turning cycles of the universe continue on without any need for our attention, and the moon, which once held the power of life and death over harvest, now simply hangs in the sky, a silent, peaceful guardian over your slumber. There is nothing left for you to do now but to rest.